Mayday, Mayday. Declaring a fuel emergency, diverting to Santa Maria. Maintenance, this is flight 427. Copy 427, go ahead. We are looking at the diagram now. Roger that, standing by. Mayday, Mayday. Declaring a fuel emergency, diverting to Santa Maria.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the absolute wildest events in modern aviation history, the story of Air Transat Flight 236. Seriously, how does a state-of-the-art, super-computerized airliner just run out of fuel halfway across the ocean? How does a multi-million-dollar machine suddenly turn into a 30,000-foot glider? Well, we're going to break down the mechanics, the split-second decisions, and the intense ticking clock of this incredible aviation mystery, pulling facts straight from the official investigation. But before we get bogged down in the complex mechanical failures and computer glitches, we have to ground this story in its most important element, 306. That is the number of human beings, passengers, and crew whose lives were hanging in the balance on this flight. We're talking families going to weddings, couples on their honeymoon, people just hyped for a late summer vacation. 306 lives completely dependent on the machine around them and the two guys flying it. So let's rewind and see exactly how they got into this impossible situation. Section 1. A routine Atlantic crossing. Okay, so the date is August 23, 2001. We're at a bustling Toronto International Airport. It's late summer, and there's just this really relaxed holiday vibe in the air. Air Transat Flight 236 is a massive twin-engine Airbus A330 heading for Lisbon, Portugal, packed with over 47 tons of fuel. Up front at the controls, you've got co-pilot Dirk de Jager, a younger aviator, and Captain Robert Pitch. Pitch is a highly experienced pilot who actually cut his teeth flying in the brutal, unforgiving conditions of northern Quebec. As they push back from the gate, the mood is super light. Passengers are settling in, excited for the coast of Portugal. It is your picture-perfect, completely normal departure. And if you track the timeline of the early flight, everything is operating totally by the book. They take off at 8:20 p.m. About an hour in, air traffic control has them alter their route just 60 miles south to avoid some airspace congestion. Keep that minor adjustment in mind, actually, because that seemingly tiny change is going to play a massive role later on. Anyway, as they head out over the pitch-black Atlantic, the crew does their routine fuel checks every 30 minutes, comparing the fuel in the tanks against their flight plan. For the first 5 hours, everything is running absolutely flawlessly. Section 2. Distrusting the computers. Now, the A330's flight deck is ultra-modern, but what happens when human intuition clashes with digital warnings? Out of nowhere, an alarm starts blaring. The computer display is telling them that the oil temperature on engine number 2 is low, but the oil pressure is high. Now, in aviation reality, this is incredibly contradictory. Experts note that a low oil temp usually just means you've got a busted sensor, because oil temperatures normally spike during a real problem, they don't drop. And high oil pressure? That's super rare, and typically only points to oil being contaminated with fuel. So to the pilots, this combo just makes absolutely zero sense. Confronted with this bizarre data, the crew hops on the radio to Air Transat's maintenance ops back in Montreal. But think about how isolated they are right now. Maintenance is 2,500 miles away. They can flip through their manuals, sure, but they can't physically look at the plane. Without a clear answer, the ground crew basically says, hey, just keep monitoring the situation. And because aircraft sensors can occasionally act up over something as minor as a little frost, the pilots naturally anchor to this idea that they're just dealing with a computer error, not, a mechanical crisis. Section 3. The fatal fuel crossfeed. So just 20 minutes later, this minor sensor glitch escalates big time. A new, glaring warning flashes on the dash, fuel imbalance. The computer detects the right wing's fuel is way lower than the left. The pilots consult the Airbus flight manual, and the standard, by-the-book procedure for this is to open a crossfeed valve. You basically let fuel flow from the fuller tank over to the lower tank to stabilize the plane's weight. So they open the crossfeed. But here is the catastrophic reality. They aren't dealing with a simple imbalance. There is a massive physical fuel leak in that right engine. By opening that crossfeed valve, they are now actively pumping their perfectly good reserve fuel from the left tank straight out into the night sky through the leaking right engine. Now you're probably thinking, how on earth could highly trained pilots not realize there was a leak? Well, it was a literal perfect storm of design limitations and just really bad environmental conditions. First off, the Airbus system didn't have a specific alarm to explicitly say, warning, fuel is leaving the plane faster than the engines are burning it. Second, they're flying in pitch darkness. The captain actually asked the crew to look out the windows with flashlights, but it was so dark, the streaming fuel was totally invisible. Add in the fact that a manual fuel check just 15 minutes prior came up totally fine, you can totally see why the pilots were still convinced this was just a computer feeding them garbage data. But that illusion completely shatters when co-pilot De Jager takes a hard look at the fuel quantities. The situation wasn't stabilizing at all. He runs the numbers and makes a chilling discovery. The fuel gauges for the right wing tanks and the trim tank in the tail, they're reading practically zero. This is a terrifying revelation. It's no computer bug. The fuel is genuinely gone. And with what's left, there's absolutely no way they are making it to Lisbon. They are suspended high in the atmosphere, rapidly bleeding out the very lifeblood of the aircraft. Section 4. Engines flame out. Captain PJ has to act instantly. He gets on the radio with Santa Maria Control, officially declares a fuel emergency, and aggressively alters course, aiming the heavy jet toward the nearest strip of tarmac on Earth, the Lajes military base, on a tiny island in the Azores. The only problem? It's over 300 kilometers away. The race against physics is officially on. The timeline over these next few minutes is just agonizing. At 6:13 a.m., less than an hour after that very first confusing oil alarm, the right engine sucks the very last drop of fuel from its lines and dies. Now, a massive A330 cannot maintain 39,000 feet on just one engine, so they're forced to descend to 33,000 feet. The pilots are just desperately hoping they have enough juice in the left wing to limp to the island. But 13 minutes later, the left engine violently sputters and fails. Total fuel starvation. The heavy jet is now completely, 100% powerless. With both engines dead, all primary electrical and hydraulic power is gone instantly. The cockpit goes dark. The only thing saving them from literally dropping out of the sky is this genius little backup device called the RAT, or Ram Air Turbine. It's basically a small propeller that automatically drops out of the bottom of the plane's belly. As it spins in that 400-mile-per-hour rushing wind, it generates just enough juice to give the pilots basic flight instruments and the mechanical muscle to move the aircraft's control surfaces. It essentially turns a plummeting brick into a controllable glider. But the math is looking incredibly grim. Without engines, they are losing 1,000 feet of altitude for every 5 kilometers they travel forward, and they still have 130 kilometers to go. Section 5. Preparing for the worst. While the pilots are up front wrestling with aerodynamics, we really can't forget the 306 people sitting in the back. A passenger later recounted the sheer terror of this moment with a truly haunting detail. They said, "You can literally hear a pin drop. There was no sound in that plane, in that cabin at all." Just think about that. You're so used to the constant, deafening roar of jet engines on a flight, to suddenly be suspended mid-air in total dead silence? It's an unnatural, horrifying experience that signaled to everyone on board that the end could be very near. Without engines to pump air, the cabin depressurizes, and the yellow oxygen masks drop from the ceiling. The flight attendants realize the extreme peril here, and they begin frantically but methodically prepping the cabin for a water landing. They're running down the aisles handing out life jackets. They instruct everyone to take off their shoes so they don't puncture the emergency slides. They're shouting strict orders not to inflate the life jackets inside the plane, which is absolutely crucial so people don't get trapped against the ceiling if the cabin fills with water. Finally, the passengers are told to lean forward and assume the brace position. Now, the reality of this situation is incredibly desperate, because ditching an airliner in the open ocean is highly fatal. Aviation experts will tell you that planes like the A-33, with a low-mounted tail, make terrible boats. When they hit the water, the tail usually strikes first, gets violently ripped off, and tears the massive fuselage wide open. We actually saw this tragic reality back in 1996 when a hijacked Ethiopian Airways Boeing 767 ran out of fuel and tried a water landing. It broke apart, and the survival rate was devastatingly low. So, as the flight attendants strap in and the passengers hold on for dear life, this 300-ton aircraft continues its silent, terrifying glide toward the dark waters of the Atlantic. The pilots are doing everything humanly possible with their single-spinning backup propeller to stretch the glide path to that tiny island in the Azores. But the math is unforgiving and the altitude is bleeding away rapidly, which leaves us with the ultimate question. Can a powerless 300-ton glider possibly make the runway, or are 306 people about to face a catastrophic ditch in the middle of the ocean? It's a cliffhanger that proves aviation history is sometimes way more gripping than any fiction.